evangelical Christians exhibit some of the most contentment with their personal financial status. And year after year, this group remains one of the most generous segments, and for evangelicals, it does not seem to connect to how much they make. They're just generous. But it went on to say that for most Americans, giving is a luxury or a nice thing to do, but not typically viewed as a necessity. And even though while the economy is showing signs of improvement, they went on to say that it would be a tragedy if donors did not reevaluate the overall basis of their giving, that it's not just an extra thing to do or something to do for tax benefits, but rediscovering the truest meaning of generosity. When we talk about tithing, it isn't a subject to promote legalism, but in essence, it is a subject to begin a discussion where God began. If you look in the scripture in the book of Leviticus, chapter 27, verses 30 through 32, the Message translation. I want to have a translation that you could really get. It says, "A tenth of the land's produce, whether grain from the ground or fruit from the trees, is God's. It is holy to God. If a man buys back any of the tenth he has given, he must add 20% to it." That's quite an interest rate, isn't it? "A tenth of the entire herd and flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod is holy to God." That the tithe belongs to the Lord, it belongs to God and not to the people. And according to the scripture, it applied to everything and not just some things. The tithe was holy. It was to be set apart and given to God and not used for any other purpose. Now, the word tithe in itself means the tenth. It's the definition of a tithe is a tenth. But today, people use that term to describe all of their giving. And by that, I mean that some people place a random dollar amount on the tithe line and then declare that that's their tithe. Now, you can donate 2%, you can donate 5%, but you cannot tithe 2%. And you cannot tithe 5% or 7%. You can't tithe 9% because a tithe means 10th part. But there are also people who understand very clearly that the tithe is 10% and upward. It is the entrance level. And so they begin giving 10%, and then they move to 15%, then they move to 20%, and 25%, and 30%. You ought to read some of the stories of wealthy family household names that you know, Colgate and Welch's and Kraft, and you ought to Google their stories and see how philanthropic they were and how they gave to God's work.